Hey everybody, Drew Dinkmeyer here at DailyRoto, breaking down my cash game lineup for week 2 from FanDuel slate. I use this cash game lineup for both Thursday through Monday contests and Sunday only contests. I ran only one lineup, talked a little bit on our DraftKings cash game week 2 lineup review video about how you can construct multiple lineups to get exposure to different plays that you're interested in. But on FanDuel, I felt this week the pricing was so straightforward that I only had one cash game lineup, and I felt very comfortable with it. So let's talk a little bit through this cash game lineup, which you can see here. It ended up finishing 6th out of 68, doubling my $50 entry for $100. And this is the lineup and how it looked. Of course, every week the foundation for my decision making is based off of the projections that I and Mike Leone spend hours on every single week at DailyRoto. Probably estimated between the two of us somewhere around 20 to 30 hours of projection work each and every week, just manually checking market shares and different things like that. So at the quarterback position on FanDuel, we had a pretty big gap in the value with Matt Ryan priced at 8,200. This week we saw Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, and Tom Brady all projecting somewhat similarly. High total, fast-paced games with high implied totals for their individual team, projecting a lot of potential touchdowns. That's often where you want to find your quarterback selections. Sometimes, as you can see, the values get really congested at the quarterback position, so it's an opportunity to pay down. But without the top-tier running backs that you're really setting your eyes on this week, with no David Johnson, with Le'Veon Bell in a more difficult matchup, it became apparent to us that paying up at the quarterback position was very accessible in a strategy that we recommended. So I started the lineup off with Matt Ryan, and then at the running back position, I moved to Melvin Gordon and Ty Montgomery. These two were the two strongest values in the running backs for us. We had Le'Veon Bell in that same group, but lineup construction would have made it a little bit more difficult with Le'Veon Bell if you wanted to fit Julio Jones in at wide receiver. So I skipped on Le'Veon Bell, went to Ty Montgomery and Melvin Gordon, who were the other two clear-cut strong values. Again, Melvin Gordon dominating our value projection this week with an expected heavy workload here. At the wide receiver position, the choices were pretty straightforward again for me on FanDuel. You had Larry Fitzgerald a little bit underpriced at $6,600. We talked about how I played Larry Fitzgerald in our DraftKings video as well. He was my big disappointment this week, going for just 3 for 21 against the Colts, while all the other Arizona wide receivers seemingly put up huge games. Keenan Allen at $7,100, more appropriately priced on FanDuel than on DraftKings, but still a little bit underpriced. Julio Jones, in our opinion, underpriced at $8,800 on FanDuel. J.J. Nelson at $5,300 I thought was a little bit of a stretch for cash. Jordy Nelson at $8,100. And then the guy I ended up on was Chris Hogan at $6,200. And this was a price play that fit, but also a way to get some New England exposure into this lineup. You can see I have Matt Ryan for Atlanta. I have Ty Montgomery for Green Bay. I have Julio Jones for Atlanta. I didn't have any New England exposure in the lineup, so I forced a little bit, went down our projections a little bit for Chris Hogan and fit him into my lineup at $6,200, rounding the wide receiver core out with Julio Jones, Chris Hogan, and Larry Fitzgerald. All three players on teams with implied totals over 25, all three players that we were projecting to receive at least 7 or more targets. So it's trying to get volume in all three players that can be used in the red zone. Now, I only accrued 1 touchdown out of this group, and Larry Fitzgerald was by far the most disappointing piece. But my selection at tight end really paid off and really paved the way for this lineup. Travis Kelce at just 7% owned. Many were scared of the matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles and how stout they had been against tight ends last season, but it wasn't a primary concern with me. Travis Kelce being used in much different ways this season and simply underpriced at $6,700. Rob Gronkowski was in consideration at a little bit more expensive, and certainly Coby Fleener as a cheap tight end was certainly in consideration as well. You can see some of our top values here: Gronkowski, then Jordan Reed and Travis Kelce, with Travis Kelce having a higher projection than Reed, Olsen and Fleener alongside Jimmy Graham, all as, nobody has a great value here at the tight end position, a little bit overpriced on FanDuel, but all representative plays. Kelce was the guy I landed on. I felt like he had the highest upside. Jordan Reed's been battling some nicked up issues with his feet, and he seems to always have injury issues. So Kelce was the tight end choice I landed on. At kicker, I went with Oakland's kicker. Again, I was trying to find a way to get access to a high implied total here. Oakland had an implied total in the high 20s facing the Jets. Only one field goal opportunity for Tavecchio, and it came very late in the game. We actually had Chris Boswell and Cairo Santos projected a little bit ahead of Tavecchio. Both those guys ended up outscoring him, so if I would trusted our projections there, I could have eked out a little bit more in this lineup. And then the Baltimore Ravens defense, which for us on FanDuel were severely underpriced at $4,700, very clearly the top play on FanDuel by a wide margin. If you sort by our value column, we have them almost 0.3 points better from a value perspective as everyone else. So very straightforward cash lineup for me. I think if I was going to construct multiple cash lineups on FanDuel, it would be very, very small tweaks. I think Matt Ryan was clearly the strongest quarterback play. You could maybe make an argument for Phillip Rivers since he was $7,000 and so cheap, but you didn't necessarily need that extra salary relief. Melvin Gordon, Ty Montgomery, very strong plays. Julio Jones, a very strong play. We had Larry Fitzgerald as a very strong play as well. So really the areas that I might tweak if I was making multiple builds off this would be this wide receiver 3, tight end, maybe go up to Gronkowski here and try to find a way from coming down either with Matt Ryan to Phillip Rivers and then maybe Chris Hogan to JJ Nelson, but then you get 2 Cardinals, gets a little bit tricky there. Or going down at tight end to a Coby Fleener and then up from Chris Hogan, which I saw some people do with a Coby Fleener and Brandon Cooks route that was much weaker from a result standpoint, but I don't think was wildly worse from a projection standpoint. So there were only a few spots, maybe the kicker spot, but I thought for me on this slate, defense was locked in, Fitzgerald and Julio Jones were locked in, Ty Montgomery and Melvin Gordon were locked in, and Matt Ryan, as they were just such strong values relative to the field. Now, this lineup ended up doing quite well in double ups and 50-50s and ended up making money, mostly because nobody owned Travis Kelce and he kind of outpaced most of the other tight ends. But it was just a really solid lineup. Ty Montgomery, our cover boy, really came through for us. It's obviously high owned in these double ups, but really underpriced at 6,500. So a profitable week for me in FanDuel cash games. Hopefully it was a profitable week for you. And if not, hopefully this video shed some light on how I go about making cash game lineup decisions on a week-to-week basis. Thanks for tuning in, and best of luck the rest of the way for you guys.